Hey guys, so in this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about keeping long hours as a developer and maintaining a good routine to keep focused, keep energized, and physically and mentally healthy throughout that process. I'm going to talk about my personal schedule, break down what I went through, and maybe give you some recommendations on what you can do with your schedule and how you can apply it to whatever works for you. So before I get started, I changed my layout here a little bit, fixed my lighting, and added this little Jimmu robot onto the table just for a prop here. This is something that my little sister and I put together. We bought it from the Apple store and just pieced it together. So it's nothing cool. I'm not a mechanical engineer or anything like that. But it's always fun to get the younger ones involved in tech and just trying to keep them interested. So my schedule, this is my personal routine. This is what worked for me. Everyone's gonna have their own style. So just take away what you can from this and apply it to your life, but there should be some pretty good tips in here. So I don't work the hours that I used to work. I used to put in 16-hour days very regularly, and that included weekends. So I had to find a way to really break up my day and keep healthy throughout that process. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it, and I have my computer here, so I'll go over my notes. But the first thing is, again, I talked about breaking up the day into sections. So what I would try to do is mentally trick myself into working these long hours, but feeling like my day was actually very short. So what I would do is make a single day. So if it was a 16-hour day, I would break it up into two parts to where I would have a long enough break in between. So it felt like I just had 2 half days and I was mentally refreshed. So the day would always start off, here I'll just go through the timeline. I would always start the day off around 5 a.m. And I'm not one of those people that thinks everybody should do this. I know some people sleep in a little bit and then work late into the night, but I would start off at 5 a.m. and the first hour of the morning was critical for me. This is the point where I can center myself and I would go take my morning walk. This is where I would meditate, focus on things throughout the day, and try to keep things very light. I wouldn't go directly into work, just not to jump onto my computer right away, but allow myself some personal time to center myself and get some fresh air. And it was usually still dark out in the morning, very cold. So it was nice to breathe in a little oxygen and spend about an hour from 5 to 6 just for myself and doing what I needed to do and get some exercise and just meditate for a little bit. So once I was done with the walk, I would normally come home. Sometimes this would be a run, but I would come home from the walk and I would spend my time usually somewhere in a more relaxed environment. So I wouldn't go into the office directly. I would go into my kitchen or living room, somewhere I can just kind of sprawl out a little bit, maybe sit on the couch. And this is where I did preparation for the day. This was very light work, maybe finishing up a task from the night before or prepping what I need to do for the coming day here. So I normally wouldn't try to check emails because that can start throwing me off and send you into this reaction mode where I'm responding to everybody. So I always made sure to keep the workload very light. And this was normally between 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Those quiet hours, I wanted to keep it that way. These were still my personal hours. So once we would get right into about, I think it was around 8 or 9 a.m. So usually 2-3 hours in the morning to myself. This is where my productive hours were. I worked from home in most cases when I was even working at the lab, but I would have my home office, and this is where I would do most of my heavy lifting here. And 9 to 1 were my power hours. This is where I would get the most amount of work done. So this is where airplane mode goes on, my phone is away from me, and I get to work, my headphones go in, and I do the heavy lifting. So I have my dual screens, I have the whiteboard, I have all the tools that I need, and I get to work. So at this point, I put in about 3, 4, maybe 5 hours of just coding and powering through everything. Now, in that time, there were times where maybe about 2 hours into it, 3 hours into it, I would allow myself these little breaks. So I would go outside, go for a 15-minute walk, and get some fresh air and get right back into it. But when I'm on that walk, this is still work mode. So I don't let myself really get away from work. I still focus on what I'm doing, but just let my brain unwind for about 15 minutes and then get right back into it and get to work. So right after 1, this is usually where I allow myself a social and physical break. So depending on the day, if somebody wants to meet up for coffee, for lunch, I would go ahead and do that, or I would spend this time maybe going to the gym. We have a basketball court in our neighborhood here, so I'll go and just shoot some hoops and get some physical exercise. Maybe go take a walk with my wife, go to the park. But this is where the first part of my day would end. So I just put in from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Just put in these hours, and that is almost a full day. But because I allowed myself to ease into it slowly with my walk and meditation and those light hours, I was able to, in a sense, end the day, get my physical exercise, and sometimes even actually take a quick power nap in this time, maybe a 20-minute to 30-minute nap, or just lay down, close my eyes, reset, and then the second part of my day starts. So this is right around, I have it listed here, around 3 p.m. So 3 p.m. is kind of like my 6 a.m. here. So I get back into it. I go take a shower. I go ahead and I get to my either to the kitchen, to the living room, sit on my laptop, and do another about hour to hour and a half work. And this is normally where I'm finishing up what I was working on for that day, or just prepping for the second part of the day. So about an hour and a half of just sitting on the couch, just doing some light work. Maybe at this point I'm responding to some emails. And then I usually give myself about half an hour to drive out to a coffee shop, or maybe the local library. And I spend the second half of the day in another location. So because I'm working these hours, I don't want to have to spend it stuck in my office. This can really wear you out and make you feel like you're some kind of prisoner just trapped in your little cubicle. So I allow myself to spend the second half of the day normally in some kind of area where I'm surrounded by other people and it's a little bit more of a relaxed environment. So I get a cup of coffee and I put in a few more hours of work. So I would get to the coffee shop around 5 p.m. at this point. So from 3 to 4:30, I'm doing the light work. 5 p.m., I normally get to a coffee shop. In my case, I go to downtown Portland a lot, and there's a few coffee shops I like to go to that are open pretty late. And I start working from 5, and to 9 is another power hour. So I have my headphones in, and I am back to work, but it's a little bit more laid back than the morning session. So at this point, I work those hours, and my day is normally done at this point, or for my current work schedule, it's usually done around 9 p.m. Now, when I was working those 16-hour days, I would normally end it there. That's another 4 hours of work, and I would go home and usually work until about 1 to 2 in the morning. I stay away from that now, but that's where I would power in the rest of the rest of the workday. So that's the entire work schedule, and I have a few takeaways I want to kind of bring up at this point. And the trick that worked for me was, and I mentioned this earlier, but it was to break up your day and trick your brain into feeling like this is some form of social event here. So because you have this half day, your brain doesn't feel like it's staring at the same screen all day, and your eyes don't get dreary. So allowing yourself to physically take these breaks and also break up the schedule kind of tricks your brain into feeling like it's a new day. So you feel like it's a fresh start, and it keeps me motivated the whole time. And I just feel energized, and I almost forget that I even put in that first half of the day because I had that time to take a break. So I would recommend staying physically active as much as you can. Somebody asked me if I take any medication for staying focused. I don't take any medication. I don't take ibuprofen, not even when I was, even when I played football and I'd come home with bruises and just banged up. I stayed away from that. I think that just being mentally sharp and physically sharp does the trick for most people. So that's what I would recommend. And the last thing, a lot of us developers can really, throughout this process, you really can, you start feeling very isolated from everybody. It's very easy to get into your own rhythm and just feel isolated from the rest of the world. So it's very important to try to allow those hours to spend some time with somebody. For me, it was meeting up for beers with my brothers, or just having a cup of coffee with my wife, taking a walk, but allowing myself to interact with people and get away from code and actually communicating with others and just staying in touch. And one of the things that does is when I used to end my day at 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., I used to go to bed right after work. And so I would finish the day, crawl into bed, and just pass out for the night. And the problem with this was when I went to sleep, my mind was usually still on what I was working on the day before, or not the day before, but what I was just working on. So I'm not getting a good night's rest anyways, and my mind's still working the whole time. So it's really important to try to break up the day to where before you go to bed, you're allowing yourself to either talk to somebody, maybe go watch a TV show, do something that is completely separate from code, but allows you to unwind and go to bed without having to continue thinking about what you were working on. And normally you'll still do that. I still go to bed thinking about maybe a problem I'm trying to solve, a bug I'm trying to fix, but it's not so severe as when I'm coding and then go right back to bed. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you can take something away from this and really help you in your schedule and somehow apply it to what you're doing.